The Storm Unleashed, Secrets of Everwood. By Edwina Longbottom. Chapter 1. The storm unleashed Everwood was more than just a town. It was a tapestry of whispered secrets and half-told truths. The ancient oak trees surrounding its periphery stood witness to history's best left buried, their gnarled branches twisted like the very roots of the tales they concealed. On this particular stormy autumn night, the air was thick with anticipation and the moaning wind carried whispers that seemed to echo from another time. The Everwood Manor, a looming Gothic structure perched ominously at the town's edge, possessed an aura of grandiosity and decay. Tonight, its stone walls felt colder than ever. Within its dim and dusty confines lay the library, a room once vibrant with the scholarly pursuits of its late owner. Tonight it would host a very different scene. In the dim light, the body of Nathaniel Caldwell, philanthropist and provocateur, lay unceremoniously on the Persian rug, lifeless and cold. His wealth had cast long shadows over the lives of many in Everwood. His death now cast suspicion. The storm that raged outside seemed a fitting backdrop to a life marred by controversy and dubious dealings. It was not long before the local authorities, overburdened and bemused, called upon the expertise of a man who was itself a shadow in human form, Detective Ethan Blake. Grizzled and heavy-browed, Ethan was no stranger to towns like Everwood, nor to the secrets that festered within their confines. He arrived as did the storm, unannounced, and with a quiet intensity that made even the rain seem to pause in his presence. As he stood over Nathaniel's body, Ethna's mind danced between past and present, his thoughts a tumultuous echo of the storm outside. Occasionally, he would close his eyes, trusting the revelations of the unseen. To understand death, one must understand life, a maxim he lived by with fervent conviction. Yet for all his cunning, Ethan knew that this web of intrigue would require more than his instincts alone. He needed someone who whispered among the elite, someone who understood the heartbeat of Everwood's secrets. And fate, or perhaps the storm itself, had brought just the person to his side. Chapter 2. Unexpected Alliances. Ava Monroe was not meant to be there. What began as a routine assignment for a column had evolved into something far richer and more perilous. As a journalist, Ava thrived on stories that peeled back the layers of public personas, revealing the flesh beneath. Everwood, she soon discovered, was a buffet of such narratives. Arriving amid the storm, hair plastered wet against her forehead, Ava found herself at the heart of precisely what she sought, mystery intertwined with danger. Her instinct moved her to the heart of the investigation and into the orbit of Ethan Blake. From their first meeting, Ava found Ethan intriguing, a man cloaked in enigmas nearly as complex as her own. Their partnership, while initially unspoken, blossomed out of necessity.
For Ethan, Ava was more than a conduit to Everwood's elite. She was a mirror to his own fractured quest for truth.
For Ava, Ethan represented a path through the labyrinth of suspicion that entwined everyone they encountered.
Together, they set about unraveling the threads of Everwood. Nathaniel Caldwell had been both a giver and a taker, filling his estate with estranged family, snapping business partners, and those who would smile through clenched teeth. Each of these souls was now a pixel in the growing tableau of murder. Outside the manor, the oak trees whispered among themselves, leaves rattling like chattering tongues. Inside, Ethan and Ava began their string of interviews, each question a tug at the fabric of deceit that covered the town. They would need to look beyond the obvious, delve where eyes seldom roved, for they were pitted against a cunning that thrived in the shadows. A drumbeat of foreboding. It was here, amidst rich wood paneling and grandiose portraits, that Ethan and Ava introduced themselves.
Ethan began with an ease that belied the gravity of the situation. Gerald, his voice almost a whisper, recounted his last encounter with Nathaniel in broken pieces, each a fragment of a lifetime of contention.
Had Gerald harbored a long-standing animosity that had flowered into this?
Ava listened intently, watching for the small betrayals of eye and hand. She was just as skillful at reading people as she was words, often sensing what lay unspoken between lines. Yet with Gerald, the heavier truth lay buried beneath Grief's veil, and Ethan recognized it too. From Gerald, they moved to Helen, the widow replete with a wealth of contradictions. Helen was statuesque, her manner calculated, her grief perceived more as an inconvenience than a bereavement. Her eyes always seemed focused beyond their mark, as if searching for something lost amidst the shadows.
Ethan's questions were methodical, piercing through her detached exterior.
Helen spoke of Nathaniel's altruism, yet there was an inherent tension to her words, an accusatory edge, as if her narrative struggled against another less savory. Ava noted the way Helen's gaze occasionally flickered to the windows, following the dark dance of trees as if they whispered secrets meant only for her. Their suspicions began their web across Nathaniel's family and acquaintances, touching the edges of townsfolk whose lives had strangely interlocked with his. Among them was Benjamin Reed, a businessman whose financial fortunes had waxed and waned under Nathaniel's influence. The murkiness of their dealings promised avenues both murky and promising for Ethan and Ava. Chapter 4. Voices in shadows. A night passed, giving way to a day grayer than its predecessor. The storm, though subdued, left the town draped in a drizzling mist. Everwood's idyllic appearance sat in juxtaposition to the turbulence beneath, much like Nathaniel's ever-smiling photograph that graced the mantel within the manor.
Ava found herself drawn back to the library repeatedly, now more curious about the man behind the mask than the body that had been spirited away. There, among shelves of leather-bound tomes darkened with age, the dust seemed to settle quicker than before, as if stories sought rest after a violent climax.
Sifting through those stories, Ava found documents and letters, remnants of Nathaniel's complex world. Here, Ethan joined her, their collaboration growing seamless as conclusions began to intertwine. Each letter was a whisper of the man himself, rippling outward to disturb the delicate fabric of the life he had crafted for himself and others. Understanding Nathaniel became central to unraveling the mystery nestled in Everwood's heart. It was in this room that Ava's gut hinted at ghosts of her own, connections tangential but intent on tightening their grip. Tools of the past crossed into this investigation, threading secrets with unexpected revelations, as if Nathaniel still pulled strings from beyond. As the inquiry deepened, Ethan's past began to curl around his thoughts, shadows of his own choices and echoing regrets. Work and the jagged memories sidled uncomfortably close, until the weight of Anothera's death offered an unwelcome familiarity. Chapter 5. Unmasking truths. Days threaded with interrogations blurred into longer stretches of piecing together fragments of Everwood's past with its present. Each suspect seemed to pull Ethan and Ava into different directions, feuding business partnerships, disgruntled employees, sinister alliances laced with both envy and desire. Yet, the storm persisted. The barometric shift felt as much in spirit as in the cracked plaster of Everwood Manor. Yet, the tension that guided them both evoked more than the pursuit for justice. For Ava, the lines between observer and participant blurred increasingly with every step. Memories whispered of choices once diverted, a fracture born from ambition and mistakes. As they sought the why behind the who, traces began to point not in broad daylight, but within Everwood's very architecture, a pillar where family names were carved beside those erased from mention. It was a secret that hid not just in tactics but in the very deeds that bound the land beneath them. It was here that Ethan finally tied together an overarching deceit, a scandal nestled not in wealth but betrayal. Voila! The threads of Nathaniel's past and present adversaries were revealed, allies of convenience eclipsed by final grievances. Chapter 6. Revelations. The denouement unraveled with breathtaking swiftness, much like the receding storm clouds, clearing the way for truth's illumination. In an unexpected twist, it was revealed that the murderer was someone neither Ethan nor Ava had suspected, a gentle character, a loyal servant whose quiet demeanor masked a deep resolve.
Driven by a long-forgotten scandal knotted with family ties and oaths of vengeance, they had been guided by motives shaded in grey, their actions less monstrous and more driven by fate's cruel hand.
The shocking confession unveiled a chain of events set in motion years prior, a narrative largely invisible until the climax of Nathaniel's death. As the servant disclosed their motives, an interconnected web began to unspool, a tapestry woven from threads of loyalty, betrayal, and justice sought in the shadows. Yet, there was still one twist, a revelation that veered the investigation toward the deeply personal. It was Ava's past that now stood exposed, strands of history that intermingled with the present tragedy. It turned out that an article she had written, a seemingly innocuous piece from years past, had unknowingly reignited old rivalries and inflamed the scandal that led to Nathaniela's demise.
Ava, always the relentless seeker of truth, never imagined her words could carry such weight. That discovery brought with it a sorrow and culpability she had never anticipated. It was as if the very storm that had battered Everwood mirrored the tempestuous consequence of her actions.
Chapter 7. Shadows dispersed in the days that followed the storm's dissipation. Everwood returned to a semblance of its former calm. The manor, no longer spectrally haunted, echoed with the absence of its controversial master but whispered of possibilities anew. The oaks around it stood firm, having been witness yet again to human folly entangled with nature's indifference.
For Ethan, the case was but another layer added to his collection of unsolved memories, a reminder that every truth unveiled brings its own specters. Yet he left Everwood a different man, conscious of a journey shared, not just conclusion reached.
Ava, too, emerged altered. The experience had etched itself into her professional and personal life, shifting her perception of the boundaries between writer and story. Her role was no longer just about uncovering truths, but about understanding the consequences of unveiling them. She carried the weight of her indirect involvement, resolved to tread more lightly, yet more deeply.
And as the town retreated back to whispers and murmurs among its residents, Ethan and Ava parted, both touched by the complexities they had uncovered, both promising to renew their acquaintance under less shadowed circumstances.
Epilogue. Whispering shadows. Even as peace settled, Everwood remained a theater of secrets, with its witness trees keeping vigil over the town's unending saga. The people, their hidden depths artfully masked in everyday life, continued weaving their stories against the timeless backdrop of nature's stoic gaze. While the storm had passed, its whispering shadows lingered, whispering truths yet to be told. Everwood's inhabitants carried on, nestled under the watchful boughs of ancient oaks, each a reminder that, like the trees themselves, truth grows best when rooted deep beneath the shadows. Thus concluded the tale of Everwood, a narrative not just of one autumn night but a testament to the intertwining of past and present, and the mysteries that lie just beyond the reach of understanding.